Next on this special edition of Currents News. Emerging from the wreckage of Ian, uncertain of where they'll live next. A look at a brewing housing crisis in Florida. Our comprehensive coverage continues. And the Big Apple has a big problem. The mayor saying the city can't survive with its 17,000 migrants. He's declared a state of emergency.
We're going to do what we have to do in New York, but we do need help to deal with this crisis that we're facing.
It was a sacrilegious attack caught on camera, but he's back on the streets. The latest on the man who targeted a Queens parish. Plus, she's coming out of retirement to serve the Diocese of Brooklyn. I'm Christine Persichetti. This special edition of Currents News starts right now. More than a week later, and it's becoming clear Florida will never be the same. One of the strongest storms leaving its mark. And another bruise. This storm won't bring rain, but it will bring heartache. We're talking about a housing crisis. After the pandemic, Florida already had one, and now Hurricane Ian has only made it worse. Now people are asking, where am I going to go and who is going to help? All week long, Currents News has brought you exclusive coverage about the Catholic Church providing that help and creating hope. This is their latest endeavor.
We don't know our future because we don't know, can we rebuild?
That's the question on the minds of many Floridians whose homes were destroyed by Hurricane Ian. Days after the storm ripped a devastating path through the Sunshine State, knocking out power and water and killing more than 100 people, residents are left with the daunting task of picking up the pieces that are left behind.
I haven't seen anything like this, and I live in Southwest Cape, and my house got creamed, and it's a new house. You know, built to code and all that good stuff.
What makes matters worse, the state was already facing a shortage of affordable housing before the storm hit. Now those who live on low or fixed incomes are struggling to find a place they can afford and competing with people who lost the homes they owned. Many of them don't have flood insurance.
Massive devastation. Something somewhat used to. My first deployment actually was Hurricane Katrina, so seen a lot of hurricanes over the years. This certainly is a big disaster.
Catholic Charities USA has mobilized teams to help the storm victims. Many are turning to the federal government, signing up for aid through FEMA so they can move on with their lives. President Joe Biden came to Florida this week with a pledge of support.
We have one job and only one job, and that's to make sure the people of Florida get everything that they need to thoroughly recover.
We won't know the full extent of the damage or the number of people who lost their homes for weeks, but some are saying remaining in their water-ravaged home is their only option. Let's take a closer look at what could become the nation's next big housing crunch. More than 2 million households in Florida with incomes below $50,000 pay more than 30% of their income in rent or mortgage. That's more than a quarter of the total households in the state. On top of that, in the counties that were under evacuation orders, less than 20% of homes have flood insurance. Moving isn't even an option for Luis Reyes, despite Ian's destruction and how many more times a hurricane might hit. He works with Catholic Charities on disaster relief, but this time the storm hit home. We asked him about choosing to rebuild instead of running.
It's a little bit traumatizing, just to say the least, because home is what the heart is, and when your home is disrupted, I mean, nothing is the same, believe it or not.
Why do you continue to rebuild your home after storms? Why not just pack it up, sell the house, and go somewhere else?
It comes to the time that you got to realize you are a result of your environment where you live at. That's the first foremost. You got your family. You build your homestead in there. That is your identity of who you are. Maybe future generations will happen to stay in the same location and say, here's what my grandfather, here's what my father, they built this, they went through this, they fought it to thick and cold. That's the making of a family trait and of a city, a town, and their people.
How has your experience working for Catholic Charities Relief Team helped you rebuild your own home?
It's no science. It's no different than being a parent. There's no book. there's no guidance. Once that you're there, either you do or you don't do. The same thing with life. You make the best of what you got, and you hope that everything out to be okay. But there's no guiding book for that. You just try.
So how has Catholic Charities helped you and your family?
Oh yeah, no. The community, Catholic Charities, everybody is doing whatever it takes just to move on in life and to make sense of whatever doesn't have sense. And at this time and case, it's Mother Nature. No one can against Mother Nature. But what helps is that everybody's socially collective as a group, look after each other, and speak volumes. That's why the church helping, even the government helping, and us doing for ourselves, because if you sit down and don't do nothing for yourself, nobody can help you, because they don't know what you're going through. But if you don't do something to create a little bit of who you are to move forward, you will stay there and the world will pass you by.
Luis, tell me for a moment about that statue. It's on your left. It looks like it wasn't even touched by the hurricane.
You'd be surprised. That statue, I saw that one in the curve and I picked it up because our house, not only to say it's like a sanctuary, we got so many birds that you will have no idea. So we brought St. Francis, since I found it, and say, well, guess what? This is home for you. So I put him there. A mango tree across from it, like about 100 feet, 15, 20 feet out of that tree, dispersed and came down inches away from the statue. Well, guess what? He was meant to be home because he stood there. So he symbolized not only the love that we have for nature, our reformation that we have something to look after us, whether it's God, some other saints, or to make sense of you're not alone. You're here, and I guess we will be here for whatever time God deems us to be here.
Again, that was Luis Reyes down in Fort Myers. If you want to help people like him, you still can. The Diocese of Brooklyn set up a special fund, not only for the people of Florida, but also for recovery efforts in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Just make a check payable to the Compostela Fund of the Archdiocese of Brooklyn and mail it to Diocesan Finance Office, 310 Prospect Park West, Brooklyn, New York, 11215. And as always, to be part of our comprehensive coverage, make sure you do not miss a story on thetablet.org. Follow the Tablet online for the latest stories about Hurricane Ian and cleanup efforts led by the Catholic Church. New York City's mayor has had enough. He declared a state of emergency Friday, pleading for help with the so-called migrant crisis.
New York City has already done more than nearly any other city to support this influx of asylum seekers. And we cannot deprive longtime New Yorkers of support and services, even as we address the needs of these new arrivals. It's not sustainable, and it is not right.
So far, more than 17,000 migrants have come to New York City since April. That's just a small fraction compared to the migrant interactions in border states. The mayor said those thousands of asylum seekers are overwhelming our shelter system. More than 61,000 people are currently in it, and that number is expected to go up. The man accused of stabbing an FDNY EMS captain to death this week pleaded not guilty, just a day after Allison Russo-Elling's family and friends said their final goodbyes. The casket carrying the body of slain Captain Allison Russo-Elling arrived at the Tillis Center on Long Island in an FDNY ambulance. The dreary weather befitting this somber day as hundreds of firefighters lined up for a final farewell to the 25-year veteran of the department who was stabbed to death last week in a random attack while on her lunch break in Astoria.
No parent should ever have to bury their child.
Allison's brother unable to hold back tears, while her father talked about stumbling across the horrific surveillance video that showed his daughter's murder.
I couldn't hear her cry out, "Mom, Dad, help!" No, only God knows the horrific look on her face as he stabbed her to death.
But Allison's daughter asked everyone not to think about the suspect.
Any hate in your heart created from this sudden calamity, I need you to remove that. I need you to replace it with love.
Amazing grace.
Full of love is how everyone here remembered Allison. They say she was tough, fearless, and the mother hen of her station. The acting fire commissioner says Allison answered some 25,000 911 calls over the course of her career and posthumously promoted her to the rank of captain. FDNY chaplain Monsignor Jamie Gigantiello tried to comfort the grieving.
Always remember her as loving you, and also know that you will see her again.
Mayor Adams also spoke at the memorial service. He said Russo Elling is the 1,158th FDNY member to die in the line of duty. New Yorkers showing their true colors, stepping up to help out a teen tourist who was attacked, slugged in the city. 17-year-old Caleb Chittum from Nashville was on his way to Central Park with his family on Wednesday when out of the blue, a man ran over to him and punched him in the face. Despite the shock, the family said they were even more surprised when several Good Samaritans flocked to the scene to offer help.
People were running to take a photo of the person that had done it and to provide to the police and to give them some idea of where this person had gone, because he kind of took off. And so it just felt like so many people. None of the police arrived, and they were super nice. The EMTs were super nice. And it just seemed like people just kind of cradled us in that moment. And it was almost hard to be afraid or
it felt more like he was, or the person that punched me was more of an outlier than a showing of what New York was. It felt like the Samaritans that helped us were more New York than anything else.
Yeah. It really did feel like such a testament to, what you would call love of neighbor.
Apart from this incident, Caleb and his father say they enjoyed their trip to the Big Apple and do plan on returning. Police are still searching for the man responsible. Coming up on Currents News, she's a retired NYPD detective taking on a new assignment.
I have a deep passion for helping people who have been affected by the traumas of sexual abuse and physical abuse.
We'll hear from Elizabeth Harris about her new role as Victim Assistance Coordinator for the Diocese of Brooklyn. Plus, it was a sacrilegious attack on a Queens parish. Why the suspect is back on the streets. And this. Students from across the Diocese of Brooklyn joining together to pray the Rosary. The details behind Bishop Robert Brennan's Rosary Rally. The Diocese of Brooklyn is committed to protecting children from the sin of abuse, and the Bishop of Brooklyn recently hired an expert to fill an important role in the Office of Victim Assistance. Elizabeth Harris is a retired NYPD detective who worked with the Manhattan Child Abuse Squad for more than a decade. Now, she's the Victim Assistance Coordinator in the Diocese of Brooklyn, a role meant to help bring pastoral care to victim survivors. I spoke with her following the announcement.
I've handled hundreds of cases over the years and met hundreds of children. And I think that experience I can bring to the diocese now to assist the survivors today.
Absolutely. And after you were named the Victim Assistance Coordinator, Bishop Robert Brennan released a statement, which we're going to read. He said, Detective Harris brings a unique breadth of experience that will further enhance our efforts to protect the faithful with the strong, safe environment protocols we already have in place. I am grateful she is now sharing her expertise with the diocese to assist us in this most important mission. Now, in the NYPD, as you mentioned, you monitored sex offenders. You also worked with survivors, which is something you'll be doing in this role as well. Why is it important for the church to hear directly from survivors?
Because they need to hear their stories in their words, and for them to know how this has impacted them, their lives, their families, their children. It needs to come from them.
Now, I know you are a product of the Diocese of Brooklyn, like myself, but why would you want to take on this job? I mean, here you are, you're retired, you could be living your life.
Yes, I know I have thought that, but I have a deep passion for helping people who have been affected by the traumas of sexual abuse and physical abuse. I spent a long time doing it with the NYPD and just wanted to continue that job for a little bit longer.
I would think it takes a special person to be in a job like that. What is it about yourself? What characteristics would you say help you to do this type of job?
I think anybody needs to have just the characteristics of just compassion for those that you are assisting, for those who are accused. You have to have compassion for both sides, and just to be patient, to be kind, and just to listen,
So one of your first duties will be attending the Mass of Hope and Healing. How will that help you kind of hit the ground running in this job?
Well, I think that's going to really introduce me to the diocese and to this role, and to hopefully meet some of the survivors one-on-one and face-to-face, and give them an opportunity to be heard and to come together and worship and hopefully heal and find a sense of comfort at the Mass.
That was Elizabeth Harris, the Victim Assistance Coordinator for the Diocese of Brooklyn. You can learn all about the Diocese's Office of Victim Assistance by going on their website. That's dioceseofbrooklyn.org, and click on Protecting Our Children. There you can find the Diocese's policy and procedures regarding abuse and the toll-free reporting line. And as I mentioned in that interview, the Diocese of Brooklyn holds the Mass of Hope and Healing every year to pray for those impacted by sexual abuse. It's a special liturgy planned by survivors for survivors. This year's Mass will be at Resurrection Ascension Church. That's at 8525 61st Road in Rego Park, Queens. It's on Thursday, October 13th at 7 p.m. Bishop Brennan will be the main celebrant. And you can also learn more about Elizabeth Harris by picking up a copy of this week's tablet. The paper delves deeper into her background, plus her first impression since receiving her roles. That's all in this week's edition of the paper. Meanwhile, the suspect accused of attacking Marys Nativity, St. Anne Parish in Flushing, has been released without bail. According to court documents, Gia Wang, a 37-year-old Texas man, was released from custody on non-monetary conditions. He was arrested Monday after he crashed his car into the church sign and defaced a statue of Mary. The parish's pastor, Father Jose Diaz, says he hopes Wang is eventually held accountable, but still forgives him.
Hard to forgive people you don't know, I think, right? Because I don't owe anything to you. It can be hard to forgive family, obviously, because of the ties, but still there's a vested interest in seeking reconciliation when there's a level of maturity in your heart. But someone I don't know, why would I even give you the time of day, right? But I do forgive him. I do. And I pray for him. And I told my people to pray for him.
Wang faces several hate crime-related charges, as well as a slew of other offenses. His next court date is scheduled for December 5th. So how well do you know the Bishop of Brooklyn? Well, you can learn a little more about his personal life, all thanks to a new Currents News web series, A Minute with Bishop Brennan.
And I think the Lord had a sense of humor because he sent me to the land of pasta, pizza, and pastry.
Each week, the web videos will ask the bishop a personal question like, what's his favorite meal to get in Brooklyn and Queens, and how did the bishop end up a Mets fan? Just be sure to follow Currents News on Facebook and Instagram. The first installment dropped this week, but new videos will premiere every Wednesday throughout October and November. And if you'd like to see Bishop Brennan in person, you can find him at St. Patrick's Cathedral Monday for the 45th annual Columbus Day Mass. New York's Archbishop Cardinal Timothy Dolan will be the main celebrant, while Bishop Brennan will concelebrate together with Bishop Emeritus Nicholas DiMarzio. They'll also be outside the cathedral after the Mass to watch the parade go by. If you can't make it Monday, then be sure to stick with Currents News. We'll have a reporter on the grounds with complete coverage of the Columbus Day Mass and parade. But if you can make it to St. Patrick's Cathedral, then be sure to enjoy the hallowed sounds of their organ. For centuries, the king of instruments has been the sound of Catholicism. But lately, churches across the country have been struggling to keep the melodies alive. The American Guild of Organists says there isn't enough musicians to keep up with the demand. Jody Sternad is one of the few that have chosen to keep the chords alive. She started playing in 9th grade and says her love for music goes hand in hand with her love for the Lord.
The organs are in a church, right? So when you're practicing in that, to realize that you may not have anybody else in the building, but you know God is there. And so you get to sing or play for him. Sorry.
In spite of the downward trend, the American Guild of Organists has high hopes for the future. They believe the growing number of vacancies just means more opportunities for young organists. Still to come on Currents News, it was a hero's welcome for an Irishman who made history, the daring voyage he embarked on. And the Diocese of Immigrants on full display, how dozens of Catholic school students helped Brooklyn's bishop create a living, multicultural rosary. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. From the shores of New York to the cliffs of Galway, the treacherous 112-day journey we first told you about on Currents News is now complete. Damian Brown became the first man to row that route across the Atlantic. He says the journey was a fight from start to finish. He even had to be rescued in the final stretch after heavy rain and winds forced his boat to hit rocks. But still, he made it, calling it a special moment to finally see his family and friends. Now we ask, would you take that journey? Not even if you paid me. And another question, would you want to pray with the Bishop of Brooklyn? Well, now you can. DeSales Media Group, the communications and technology arm of the Diocese of Brooklyn that operates Net TV, filmed a Rosary Rally with school children and the bishop, and that's coming up in just a moment. But first, Currents News' Jessica Easthope gives us a preview of it from the Immaculate Conception Center in Douglaston.
Exploring their faith outside the classroom. Students from 5 Catholic academies in the Diocese of Brooklyn experienced the Rosary like never before.
I really felt honored for that because that's just once in a while, once in a lifetime.
DeSales Media Group, the communications and technology arm of the Diocese of Brooklyn that operates Net TV, filmed the 2022 Rosary Rally at the Immaculate Conception Center in Douglaston. 75 students prayed the Rosary with Bishop Robert Brennan and Superintendent Deacon Kevin McCormick in 5 different languages.
It's important that they see the Rosary as an important tool for drawing close to God, but seeing other children praying the Rosary and saying, oh wow, we have something in common here.
I was taken back by it, by the ability of these kids to pray and the ability for the Lord to hear us each in such a unique way. It made it very special.
A Rosary Rally hasn't been done like this since before the pandemic. Father Joseph Jabino had the students sit together in the shape of a human rosary while they prayed in English, Polish, Mandarin, Spanish, and Creole.
We so often hear that youth are the church of the future. No, they're the church of now. So here is an opportunity for the diocese to be led in prayer by our youth and young adults.
It was cool to see like many different cultures coming together. It was like nice to see like how peaceful people can be together.
The rally, which will air on Net TV in October, shows viewers there's a lot to learn from students and that how we worship is reflected in the diversity of the Diocese of Brooklyn.
I think it's an opportunity for them to also listen and maybe try to learn.
Bring unity. I think that's the #1 word for today is unity. That's what we heard in that room today. We are the Diocese of Immigrants and we brought unity today.
Not only will the Rosary Rally air on Net TV, it will be distributed to the schools in the Diocese of Brooklyn to be used in class and faith formation programs. In Douglaston, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
And like I just mentioned, if you're watching us on Friday, stay right there. The Rosary Rally is coming up in just a few moments right after Currents News. And that wraps up this special edition of Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. I hope to see you again next time.